Every week on the podcast, Acting Like an Actor, we interview working actors about how they broke into the business, the day-to-day realities of it, and how they managed to stay sane in this crazy business. You'll get a ton of advice and inspiration on how they act like they have their ish together. Because we're all just acting like we know what we're doing. We're all just acting like actors. So let's do it together. Today we have actor, filmmaker, and host of the Artist and Emotions podcast, Cody Curtis. Cody is known for his work on films such as One for the Road, Suitcases, Simon Says, and check out his IMDb because I'm tired of talking already. Cody is an actor based in Maine, so we chat about how to work as an actor in a smaller market, how to balance acting while still having a normal job, and how you can have a balanced life as an actor. You can't.
You reach.
Are you famous?
What have you been on?
I don't really recognize you, and neither does my mom.
Can you laugh?
Can you cry on command?
I mean, you said you were an actor, man.
What's your backup plan? Is it shattered?
Dude, I'm just acting like an actor.
Our brains operate so similarly. I'm not even kidding.
Yep.
Every time I listen to you on the podcast, I'm like, wow. Like our brains and we just operate very similarly. So I really liked your solo episode. And I resonate with what you said. I also have not taken a break from acting like an actor since I started it in September, every single week. And I looked back at your podcast too. I was like, let me see if he's lying. And I scrolled down and no, he's had an episode out every week, guys, until his little break. Yeah, I'm the same way as well, which is the quality we have is so good in terms of like not overthinking and being willing to jump into action, because I'm sure you know this, a lot of people procrastinate, and so sometimes people can look at the quality we have of being able to dive into things as a good thing, and it is, but with every good thing there's also cons to that as well. Like you said, sometimes you're going without stopping. So I'm curious, what was the sign that you needed to take a break? How did you know it was time to step back?
For me, if I ever need to take a sign, if there's one big sign for me, it's just I lose energy. Because most of the time, the way that my friends and family describe me, I'm like a rabbit on crack. That's basically how I go most of the time. And if there's ever a point where I'm slowing down or I don't have the same enthusiasm for everybody who's listening, you just heard like everything. I'm an actor and a filmmaker and a podcast host and a metric ton of other things. So if everything starts slowing down, that for me is a sign that I need to stop everything, or I need to figure out what's draining me the most. And for me, at that point in time, it was the podcast. And like you said, so it's interesting you bring that up, because it's not something I've ever heard anybody else say, but it's something I definitely have thought. Because anybody who looks at what you do when it comes to the amount of times that you're on set or auditioning or any of that other stuff, or the amount of everything I have going on, it is almost like we're running 24/7, which has its pros and cons.
Yes, absolutely. So speaking of which, Cody, can you kind of give the listeners a little bit of your backstory, your story, how you fell into the world of performing arts and kind of how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, honestly, I don't think I ever left it. I think my idea and what I've learned from the arts has sort of matured over the years, because I've been performing since I was 5. It started out with church plays and like choir stuff and all of those things. But my first initial transition for how I fell in love with acting was because of a theater instructor who was initially an English teacher of mine. His name's Kevin O'Leary. For anybody who's listening, it's not Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank. It's not that Kevin O'Leary.
That hit me for a minute. I was like, wait, stop.
But he just... There was a lot of things I had going on in my own personal life, and for anybody who has listened to my podcast, you know it was a lot. And the theater and the arts provided me sort of a getaway, and I sort of stumbled into it because when I entered high school, I basically was just going with the motions. I was going to class, going home, doing my homework. That was it. And then they had auditions for Romeo and Juliet. And Kevin O'Leary, we all call him KO, he comes up to me, he's like, so here's the thing. I don't know if this is your thing or not, but I would really like you to audition for Romeo. And so I did. And 2 weeks later, I found out I got the part. And so my thought process once I got into that show was, if I'm gonna do this, I might as well give it my all. Because what a lot of people don't know about me is, ever since I was a little kid, my mother always constantly had me doing stuff. I was in gymnastics, I was on the swim team, I was helping out at a local horse farm and taking horseback riding lessons, I was in Boy Scouts, like, so many different things. And so I guess that sort of, for lack of a better word, that hustle mentality to get things done within the best possibility I could, it like, the show went great. What I mean, it was as great as a high school performance of Romeo and Juliet could be, with it being heavily edited. But the thing I'm so grateful to him for is, he never treated us like high schoolers. He treated us like professional actors. And looking back, it makes sense why. Because when he graduated and got out of high school, he went directly to the Lee Strasberg Institute and studied directly under Lee Strasberg in New York City. And the thing that I have so much respect for him is, he got out of that program and he could have very easily gone to Hollywood. He could have done, like, New York and Broadway, but he decided to teach. Like, he actively decided to become a teacher to raise the future generations of actors and performers and all that stuff, all the while making plays and works of his own, and also being in professional equity shows and doing all this other stuff. And so that mindset, looking it back now, I'm just so appreciative of that. It's specifically, I could talk about that for hours, but the biggest one for me is the last show we did my senior high school year, we did Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman. And he had so much trust in us as students who had been with him for 4 years. We ran it like a professional repertory theater. It was, get out of school, you have an hour to go get lunch or snacks or do whatever, and then we rehearse from 3 until about 10 o'clock at night. If we're going on the weekends, then we come in at 8 a.m. and we stop at 8 p.m. until the show is done. And of course, once Hell Week turned around, then the schedule's just much more insane. But the thing that show taught all of us is just, not just the craft and the art and what it really takes to really dive deep into character, because that's something that, if you want to take this professional, that's just innately what we have to do. But during that process, he also taught us about the business side of what it's like to pursue this industry, with the fact that if you want to go into this as an artist and tell great stories, you've got to put that on the back burner at some point, because being an artist and wanting to tell great stories is great, but at the end of the day, this is a business. So I graduated high school, auditioned for a theater program out west, and there was a 3-part audition progress. I went to Brigham Young University, Idaho, and their theater program, no matter what anybody thinks about the school itself, their theater program was insane. It was crazy. 3 auditions. I used a monologue that I got from Death of a Salesman for the initial audition and the callback and the final callback. And that's ultimately the monologue that got me into the program. And so went through there, did the entire program, or at least not almost the entire program, because I started in 2014, ended in 2016. I would have completed it, but I got so burnt out because what would have been my third to last semester at the school, I was helping co-direct an elementary school version of The Lion King, while I was also in a class that taught us how to do elementary school theater in terms of crafting a show and building it from the ground up, eventually to performing it to the local elementary school kids. And all the while, I was also taking a class that used the not kinesiology, but the mosaic acting method, which is a method of acting that is all about using the body's kinesiology and energy to create emotions. And that class was great. It was super intense. We had counselors on standby because it's not something where the instructor was brutal. They were very upfront about how intense the class was going to be, but they just wanted us to know that as students, while we were learning it, that it was a safe space. So if we wanted to cry, if we were feeling super emotional, we had the safety and support of counselors being nearby, or if we wanted to talk to the instructor. That happens. 2016, took a break. My family needed me. So from 2016 until the fall of 2018, I wasn't doing any acting. I honestly majored into physical therapy because that's what I was gonna go into after leaving school for theater. And then I took a short film screenwriting class with a buddy of mine, Stephen Bennett, who's a very close personal friend of mine now. And he had the script and he wanted to get it made. And he said this thing which has stuck with me to this day, which is a script that doesn't go into production. It's essentially just an idea. It is a dream or a goal without discipline or a plan to execute it. And then he immediately turns to me and goes, I want you to help me produce it. And I'm just shocked because I'm like, I don't know how to do that, but let's go. And funny enough, our last day of filming, he comes to me with new pages and says, so I wasn't planning to do this, but there is this one role that I need to cast, and I don't know if you've done any acting at all, but I'd like you to play it. And so in all around, it was sort of my first experience with filmmaking and learning what goes into all of it, because from pre-production to post inside of the editing bay, I got my first sneak peek of how to do everything. And then in school, I was majoring in communications and film specific. Physical therapy was, I'm glad we have physical therapists, I'm glad other people like it, but it was definitely not for me. The literature was so boring. That's the nice way of putting it. But so I was in the film and communications department while also doing theater program stuff and taking acting classes and all of that stuff, while also gearing up and helping produce like shorts and everything. And I will say that from, without going into the detail of everything, from 2018 to the end of 2021, I basically got a master class in acting. Acting was fine, but it sort of took a place on the back burner because I learned how to direct and cast and produce and write, and every position that you can do on a film set, I learned how to do, whether it was classes or my buddies and I going out and shooting stuff. And that eventually led to me directing my own film, which I did not act in, but then that led to another film which I directed, which I got a little bit of acting in, which is fine. But then after we all graduated, it was 2020. I wonder what happened that year. And so I had this script that I was going to put into production, but I was so disheartened by everything that I was just going to give up on it. And a couple of buddies of mine, they came to me and they said, this has the potential to not just be a short, this has the potential to be a feature. Why don't you just turn it into a feature? And with following all the guidelines that are being put in place right now, why don't we just shoot it in the fall? And so we did. From March of 2020 until September of 2020, it was all pre-production, and then we shot it. I will say, any film that you go and shoot is every kind of class that you want to learn it. For anybody who wants to be like in film in any capacity, just getting on set, you don't necessarily have to create your own projects, but being on set, as anybody can attest, is an acting class every time you're there, or a class in general. So we shot it, had a couple of mental breakdowns along the way, but then it eventually released in 2021. So an entire year where this thing wasn't going to be happening. And then 2021, I was doing the same process. I was just helping like on set, whether that was spec scripts or what have you. And then 2022 was the year. I had a bad fallout with a friend. And then an audition came around. That Stephen King project I was talking about at the top of this. There was this director. His name's David Jester. He's also now a close buddy of mine. I had worked with him a couple of times, and I said, hey, so I don't know if you're looking for actors, but I know how to also do crew stuff. So if you need somebody, I'm there, because this seems really cool. He sends me an email that has a link to the script and says, I'd like you to take a look at this. And I say, okay. And then he says, be prepared to come in on Tuesday. You're going to meet with me and our head producer, Lee. And so we do that, get there. Honestly, I prefer meetings over auditions every day of the week. We got there, we talked for an hour and a half. An hour of 15 minutes of that conversation was not about the script or the project or any of that. It was just about life and what all of us were doing in our free time. And then at the end of the meeting, they say, so come to the library on Monday, next Monday. We're going to do a cold read. Did the cold read and got cast as the lead in the film. And then from that point, that was sort of the energy that I needed to be like, okay, no more crew stuff. I need to focus on acting. And so from end of 2021 until August of 2022, it was basically project after project after project after kind of, you know, what any of us see when the very talented and wonderful Sophie Jordan Collins posts at the time she's on set literally every single week. That's kind of what it was like, and it was wonderful, and it was this hodgepodge of just everything. And then I decided I kind of want to get into the director's chair again. Wasn't planning on it. And then we shot the next film I would do, Broken Petals, and the reason why we shot it is because me, my buddy Zachary Tyler Wheaton, we knew we were going to be leaving the state of Maine in 2023, because we were going to move. He moved out to California, and I was going to move down to the southeast, to Georgia. And so we just wanted to take everything that we had learned from every set, because between me and Zach, from music videos to specs to features, we've been on every kind of set you could be, and we learned so much, and we made it. We shot this script. It's 26 pages. We shot it in 2 days, and both of us are proud. One of those days was 16 pages of shooting, and we got it done in 6 hours. Because for anybody who wants a tip on how to shoot really long scripts, this is the best advice I can give. Make sure that the actors know what they're doing, and make it dialogue heavy. Because if you have characters talking to each other and the camera movement's not super complicated, you can make a really compelling drama without needing a whole lot of time. I mean, I'm not even going to compare myself to this man, but in terms of the stress of the set and everything, Damien Chazelle shot Whiplash in 21 days? And it's like, so we did that. And then I moved down to Georgia. We were all super, super proud of what we had made. And then I guess this is where I'll sort of shift into the advice section of going along with everything. If you're someone who's not in a big market and you eventually want to move to a big market, one of the best things you can do for yourself is, if you're an actor, make sure you have a portfolio of proof behind you that you are good to immediately get on a set. Whether you're crew or an actor, it's a really good idea, because that's ultimately what happened to me. Is I knew somebody who had just lost their lead, but the casting director still wanted me to audition for the project. And I became the lead of the project, but I still had to go through a 2-part audition process before I got there. And if I wasn't confident in my abilities as an actor, or all the growth that I had had before, yeah, I'm very confident in saying that I don't think that opportunity would have happened. And so once I got down there, that project led to another one, led to a couple of smaller opportunities while I was down there. And then once again, fortunate enough, okay, it's not fortunate, but the strikes happened. We all know that was sort of a thing, and the world of indies just sort of opened up for in terms of independent non-union work. That's
all there was.
Yeah, exactly. And my buddy Zach, because he moved out to California to pursue the more tech and camera department side of things, and California, first of all, it's very expensive. As Sophie, I'm sure you know.
40% more expensive than the rest of America. Quite literally. Yeah.
And so he moved to Florida. He moved to Florida to be with family. And he and I got to talking. And I had a script which I had written 2.5 years previously. He took a look at it and he said, "Hey, so here's an idea. Why don't we go into pre-production?" And honestly, I said yes, but at the same time, I was so terrified, because this particular script, Broken Petals, was great, but on my end as an actor, there wasn't really a lot dialogue-wise that I had to be off book for. Like, it was very emotional, but there wasn't a lot of dialogue. This was the complete opposite, where the emotional tension that was inside of the script was also matched by the level of dialogue that was there. And so Zach we co-directed the thing, and the month leading up to it, he said, "Take the month off. I don't want you worrying about pre-production," because up to that point, I had cast the thing. I'd got our locations. I got our insurance. We took out a loan so we could get all the equipment and business essentials we needed to make this thing the best that it could possibly be. Everything went off. It went better than either one of us could have hoped. It's in post-production now. And I'm not going to say exactly what our plans are for it, but we are very, very close to being finished with post-production. And then, yeah, when I moved back down to Maine, or back up to Maine, Geography, everybody.
Hmm.
When I moved back up to Maine, I had this script for this little micro short that I wasn't necessarily going to do anything with, and the director of photography, who was my same DP for the feature that I shot when I initially got started with directing and all of that stuff, he sends it back to me and says, "So, when are you directing it?" And so we got into a meeting, we talked about the whole script, and we're just super super excited about it because not to toot the horn of the entire state of Maine, but for me, we have the best filmmakers in the entirety of this state, if not some of the best filmmakers in New England on this one project, and they are some of my closest friends. It's amazing. But with my entire story, the one thing I need to emphasize to everybody who might be listening, the state of Maine, New England as a whole, outside of New York, there is no industry here as of yet. Boston is sort of an exception because it is sort of gaining traction because of Matt Damon and Ben Affleck and the Tender Bar and all those really excited indie projects. But as a whole, all of the things and everything that I just talked about, all of those opportunities only came to me because I really put myself out there and worked to get to sort of build up my own space and career. And it's also one of the things that for me has garnered me so many other opportunities. And in a very, very long-winded story, that is, my name is Cody Alexander Curtis, and that is me.
No, I loved that, Cody. That was great. I loved the timestamps, all of it. That was so good. I didn't know you were a theater kid, number one. So as I was,
Yeah.
oh, if anybody out there wants to do something really interesting, scroll way down on Cody's Instagram because you, similar to me, your Instagram, you left like your old photos up. So I got a kick out of seeing your movie reviews and your theater posts. Goes way
Oh
back. You can
yeah.
really see the whole journey there. Um,
Yeah, that's one thing I didn't mention. 2016 to 2019 I was on YouTube, and that's actually how I
oh,
met. That's actually I like when it comes to the film criticism, that for me is one thing that I find interesting is that in terms of the people that are in my group, it's not just filmmakers. I have people who live in Los Angeles who are film critics or like in Arizona and Texas and Los
yeah.
Angeles, and they're buddies of mine. And so getting a
Hmm.
perspective from both filmmakers and actors but also film critics, it's an interesting dichotomy. And the one thing I wish is that we could get all these people in one room and just sit down together.
Yeah. One day you'll have to host something.
Yeah, yeah, apparently so.
So I am curious, Cody. That year that you were auditioning a lot and working a lot as an actor, I believe you said it was 2022. That
Yeah.
was prior to you moving to Atlanta, correct? So were
Yeah.
most of those projects were in New England?
Yeah, most of them,
Okay.
a couple of them were in Boston, one of them
Okay.
was in New Hampshire, and then the rest of them was all over the state of Maine.
Okay.
The one thing for me about the state of Maine, I love this state in terms of people's ideas for stories and creative drive and everything. The thing I wish I could emphasize to people more is that while they are super creative, there's not a lot of people who understand the business side of what we all do here,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
especially on the creative side. Like I'm fortunate I fell into the group and network of people who get both sides of it, who understand the creative, the network and business side of everything. So I'm fortunate there, but as a whole, there are a lot of talented filmmakers and actors and people in the state of Maine, but they don't understand how to market themselves properly.
Okay. I was just found that interesting because I know you said there wasn't much of a market there, but you still had that year that you were auditioning. So there's not much of a market, but there is a little something something going on there, yeah?
Yeah, that's true. I will
Okay.
say, for me, most of the stuff I got, it was not professional work, at least in the
Okay.
traditional sense. A lot of it was resume building. And
Mm.
for me, I'm very, very appreciative of that because outside of my own work, which everybody knows, if you're making your own work as an actor, you're going to cast yourself in some form of a lead here or there.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Stephen King project was one thing, but outside of that and other little projects, I hadn't really done a lot of leading work on screen. But doing all of the resume building and supporting roles and everything there, it allowed me to study all of the actors who I was working with who were cast in those positions, who
Yes.
were, number one on the call sheet essentially, and allowed me to see not necessarily what they did for their audition, but what they were doing on set in terms of their character and actor work, but most importantly for me, how they were treating the other people around them.
Yeah.
Because that for me really came to a head on the last project I did before I left Atlanta. Because I got cast in a project called Salt and Pepper. The trailer's actually out right now. And it is something that me and the rest of the crew are just super, super proud of. But I found myself not only as like number one on the call sheet, but my experience of being a crew member for a good portion of pursuing this thing allowed me to connect with crew members and sort of speak their language about cameras and lighting and actors and the technical side of things. If there's one thing I can tell actors, if you don't learn any of the other technical side of things, if you want to be any crew member's best friend, learn how editing works in post-production so you can keep your continuity where it needs to be. My friend Sarah Massey is a stickler about the fact that if you focus on it, you can find continuity errors specifically with actors' hair and their like little movements here and there. And just, I don't know, for me, I will always be a crew head first and foremost in terms of the people I get along with the most, because crew people, they're a different breed. Like, I swear,
Yeah.
they're always, even if things are falling apart and they're super stressed out, they're like, well, things are stressed out. I just need to get a cup of coffee and I'll be fine.
So true, yeah. And they always get it done too. Like I feel like every set I'm on, we're like rushed and stressed by the end, but somehow you always get it done. It always works out. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
Another thing that I love about your journey too, Cody, is that like you weren't in a big market. You weren't in LA or New York City, but you were still making the most of the opportunities that were presented to you, and you were creating your own opportunities, which I think is really inspiring because not every actor can move right to New York City or Los Angeles. Like you said, it's expensive, it's a big move, things like that. And not everybody, I think, is ready right away either. Yes, some people
No.
can just move out there and jump right into it, but lucky for you, you had all of those things to build up your resume and to learn before you moved to a bigger market like Atlanta. You had the preparation, you'd worked on set. Like you said, you understood crew members' positions and things like that. So when the time did come for you to be a leading man, you were ready for it.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring that up because I think our journeys in terms of actors we're two sides of the same coin here. Where you sort of took the traditional actor route. You moved to Los Angeles 3 years ago, and then you just started working and working and working at this thing, and you've sort of opened up and created your own little world and opportunities in amongst yourself. Whereas I grew up in a place where there really wasn't anything, and I didn't move to a gigantic market, but I sort of carved out a little piece of the world here. And the nice thing is between YouTube and all the film stuff I was doing is I am in the I realized it is the very fortunate and privileged position that if I call somebody anywhere in the country, I will have a place to stay. So it's like I can get off of a plane and be a local hire in any one of the major markets. And that is something for me when I was younger, I was a bit terrified to do. But now it's like we as performers and creatives on this journey, we only really get one shot at this thing. And it's like no matter what may come down the road, the thing that might come down the road and seems scary at first is ultimately the thing that could change your life completely, whether that is friendships or in your life outside of things. But the one thing I want to emphasize to everybody here, and I know I constantly talk about this on my podcast when it comes to work and mental health and everything, for me at this point, I realize people getting started out in this, I do not want them looking to me as an example, as I am currently. Because of the amount of work that I have done over the years, my ability to do like a 12-14 hour day just regularly, it feels normal to me at this point. Because I'm usually up at 5 a.m. every single day. I have a day job. That day job usually gets over by 2. And then if it's a shorter day, I will be done by 6. And if I've got more stuff going on, I might work until 10 p.m. At night getting stuff done. And if I'm in pre-production, like I was now, I got notes for the script we're shooting with from one of my producers, and I woke up at 2:30 a.m. and started working on that because it would not let me go to sleep unless I worked on it. So the one thing I want to emphasize to everybody, if you are in a smaller market, the one thing I emphasize if you are all gung-ho and you want to go at this thing 100 million miles an hour, I get it. But taking smaller steps and going at a pace that is comfortable for you is the best way to go about this. Because if we use, let's say, a sports analogy, you can't take somebody who is just starting and saying they want to run a 5K next to somebody who's a regular marathon runner. Like, things are going to be different. And if you try to do that marathon runner's pace, you're going to get so exhausted. You can build up to that same kind of pace, but even if you get to the same point that person is at, your journey is going to look completely different. So, but not being afraid of hard work, that is also a big thing we need to hit on here, because as much as we all admit we hate it, being a hard worker inside of this industry, it is the smallest thing you have to do.
Yeah, no, I love that. I also love what you said too, Cody, about knowing your capacity as a person. I do think that's a really important thing to touch on. And I kind of feel similar to you in the sense of like, I even noticed as you were talking about your childhood, you were saying you did Boy Scouts and and theater, and you were doing a million things even as a kid. So it's like you've kind of always had a very busy schedule and always had a high capacity to do a lot of things. And I was similar as well. I graduated valedictorian in high school. I did a bunch of clubs. I would go right from school to the gym and then to acting class. I was doing an intensive Meisner program my last few years of high school. So I also had already been so used to being so structured and living my life a certain way that as I pursued this industry as an adult, I already kind of had a high capacity. And it sounds like the same for you, waking up super early and doing the thing. And you're right, hard work is something we can touch on as well. I do think hard work's important. I also think working smart is important as well.
Yes, absolutely. Working hard is great, and hustling and grinding is great, but it is something that the more you do it, the more you realize there's better ways to go about things. Like, once again, for anybody who does self-tapes and anybody who's done it for a long time, when you initially got started, who knows how long it would have taken you to put together your self-tape because one thing went wrong, or the lighting messed up, or your mic messed up.
Yeah.
You didn't have, but as you keep going on this, I don't know about you, but if I'm in a good place and I've got all my character work done, I can pump out a self-tape in probably 25 minutes, 30 minutes if I'm having a little bit of difficulty.
Yeah.
And the thing is, doing it that way, it gives you the leeway to decide, okay, so you've got a shorter amount of time. You could work more, or you could split up how many self-tapes you're going to do in a day. For me, I found my capacity, if I'm feeling really good, I can usually get out 2 self-tapes a day, if that comes my way. But if I have the opportunity and there's a longer time frame on when I need to submit it, I usually like to just do 1 a day, so that way that self-tape, energy-wise and everything else, can be the best possible product that it can be for the casting team, at least on my end. And one thing me and Sophie need to emphasize is the fact that this is a 99% rejection industry. So, like, making sure that you're the best that you can be on all aspects is the best thing that you can do for yourself. And one thing, I think that this is important in regards to the area that I grew up in, because I still to this day do not have an agent or a manager. And that is something that for me, when I was younger, I really let it beat me up. And I had an agent when I was here in Maine before, but I went 2 years and got 1 audition. And that for me was like, I'm moving to Georgia soon. This is not worth it. And then I moved down to Georgia, and my agent was good, but in terms of the things I was being sent out for and sort of the communication style, it wasn't a good mix. So we parted on good terms. And so for me, my mindset now is, because like I said, that sort of thing would eat me up. The fact that a lot of my good friends and a lot of the people I know, they have agents or managers and are getting great opportunities. For me, I have everything that I need in place. It's just a matter of time. And in terms of the industry, guys, I am blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and white. My casting type, every agent and manager has like 10 of me on their roster. But I did get a message from a manager not too long ago, based out of Chicago and Los Angeles, and it was the sweetest thing. I had submitted for them initially, and it was sort of the same thing. They got back to me, which I thought was a plus, but they said we just have too many people like you on our roster right now. And when I waited 6 months after like everything that happened in Georgia happened, and they got back to me, they said, "We love your package. You have everything that you need right now, but it's sort of the same song and dance, really. So we would love for you to submit to us again in the fall." And so for me, that's the reason why sort of building your own community outside of the industry is so critically important. Because back in the day, you would just wait by your phone until it rang, or like 100 million other things. But the deeper you get into this, if you can become somebody who is self-sustaining, until that opportunity comes to sort of up level where your career is or take that next step, there won't really be any anxiety involved because you've got so much other great stuff going for you.
Yeah, no, I love that, Cody. And I like what you said too about like, yes, you put in the work, you did submit to these agents, et cetera, like you did the thing, and then you have to let it go. Like we focus on the things in our control and then we let it go. And that's kind of how you have to do it. I also like what you said about just, noticing where we're at in the industry and things like that. I think that's really important too. And not beating yourself up over it, like you said, because there really is only so much we can control, and you did all the things you know to do, and that's all you can do.
Yeah.
So,
And I mean that when it comes to any audition that we send out, whether it's agents, managers, or features or shorts, any audition where there is a 99% rejection rate, all you can do is put your best foot forward and be the best version of yourself that you can be. And at the end of the day, honestly, that mixed with just being a good person, actually, that for anybody who is listening, that is the number one piece of advice I would say to get you anywhere in this industry, indie or union or otherwise. Just be a good person and learn from the people around you, and that will get you so far. One of the people who was on the One for the Road set, who I learned so much from, and he was just so kind, was Joshua Leonard. And for anybody who is curious, it was Joshua Leonard who helped create the Blair Witch Project. He was on set with us, and he was the nicest person I think I have ever met. And on our last day of filming, the one piece of advice he gave me as a filmmaker is the industry is a fickle mistress. All you can do and be the best version of yourself and keep working hard as much as you can. And that will get you so far.
yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, that was good. Um, Okay, I want to switch over, Cody, if you're cool to talk about this. I want to talk about like discipline and scheduling and things like that because
Yes.
you're so good with that stuff. You're so good with the productivity. You also, I don't know if you actually are, but you come off like you really just have your life organized and disciplined and like down to a T. On his Instagram stories, he's always like, "This is today's agenda," and you post it at like 5 a.m. in the morning at the gym. Even this morning, you posted something that you like hip thrust like 400 pounds, which, okay, pop off. And then I like calculated in my head when you posted it, and it was like 7 a.m. your time. So I was like, oh, he had finished a workout, finished hip thrusting 400 pounds at 7 a.m. And like, I'm just rolling out of bed at 7 a.m., but it's fine. So I guess, Cody, my question for you, number one, have you always been like that? Have you been like that since you were a kid in terms of kind of having that discipline, that productivity addiction, things like that?
Productivity addiction, I don't think so. I think the
Okay.
best way I would describe I would say that my life, in terms of discipline to getting stuff done, it was more so I've got a goal and I've got things I've got to do. Let's just get them done. But now it's transitioned to being more organized. I don't even want to count how many notebooks I have just for everything,
No, I bet.
or like or a calendar of some sort. But that just comes. You get more responsibilities, and it helps to be more organized. But when I was, as we've established, like I've always had like 1.5 million things going on in my own personal life, and I thank my mother for that almost continuously, because I would say for her it's the reason why my work capacity is able to be what it is, because my mother, when she was going to school, she, number one, was a business major, but this is the kind of stuff that she had going on. She was a business major, she was a full-time wife, she was a full-time mother, she was taking care of other people's kids, and her and my father, they created an electricity business, because my father is a master electrician. So the business sort of fell through because economics at the time were wacky, and they weren't able to figure everything out. But she sort of translated that to me. And so when it came to, obviously it went into acting and filmmaking and everything that it is right now, but it didn't fully hit me that, first of all, I was homeschooled from 7th and 8th grade so I could enter high school on time properly. I got held back for one reason or another. But then it struck my mind, we went through those 2 grades in 6 months. And it was 6 months of me only being in class for maybe 3 hours a day for 4 days a week. And so I would say discipline's one of those things I've had sort of an interesting journey with, because anybody who is extremely disciplined that I have met, it's always, everybody sees it on the outset, they're like, this is amazing, you're so structured, you seem to have everything together. But on the inside, we're like, but do I don't think I'm doing enough on my personal time. And then I would say the biggest struggle I have always had is, if I ever decide to take a break or relax, I always feel guilty about it. Like, because there's always so much that I want to get done. But one thing my therapist helped me work through is the fact that if you feel satisfied with the work that you've done, not the stuff that you got to get done either tonight or tomorrow, if you're satisfied with the work that you have done at the end of the day, just give yourself permission to laze around if you want to, because tomorrow is coming.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I totally agree. For a long time, I would even like struggle to sit down and watch something, because I would be thinking as I was watching this, no, you should be doing this and this and this. You don't deserve to be sitting here watching this show. There's a million things to do, et cetera, et cetera. But I love that, taking it day by day. I think that helps to really put things into perspective. And then also, the funny thing about life, there's always more to do. You're
Yeah.
literally like, if you live your life like that, as if you have to accomplish everything, there is always something you can be doing, quite literally. No matter what industry you're in, there's always something you can be doing to be productive and better yourself. So you need to just decide not to just let that go and take a break.
100%. And the one thing that I appreciate so much about you, and we said this when we were doing my show, is just you have your own sort of discipline and schedule on lock. At least on the outside, it looks that way. And
Ditto.
things like reading Atomic Habits, or following people like Alex Hormozy or Andrew Huberman, sort of these people that, in at least for me, have the best productivity advice in terms of living a full life while also being super super productive. Because let's face it, there is good productivity advice, and then there's the productivity advice that will make your health go into the gutter.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, with that being said, I think it was your episode with Brittany as well. And you and I talked about this a little bit too, how there's seasons though in the midst of that. Like, yes, there are seasons of working harder and seasons of stepping back, and in your solo episode, and I operate like this as well, Cody, and I think that this is really good for people that are busy or have a lot going on, is to give yourself breaks throughout the day, as
Yeah.
opposed to maybe being like, I'm gonna like work for 5 days and then take the whole weekend off. I really liked that you were like, no, I'll work like 12 hours, but then I'll also like take an hour walk or like go to the gym, like fit little breaks into your day as well. I think that makes it really sustainable when you have a crazy schedule and can't step away for a week or whatever for a vacation, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And this is something that you understand very well. I mean, everybody who is wondering, Sophie's social media, if you're not on set, it seems like you're auditioning. all the darn time. And that's also to go with whatever passive income or other side businesses you've sort of got going. And my mindset now is I've realized I like working on stuff 7 days a week. The trick here is, like you said, it's not about pounding yourself into the ground with 16 to 18 hour days 5 days a week and then lazing around. It's, for me, the structure now is making sure things are structured. But for instance, the days where I like work my day job and I'm like out by 2 and in the gym by 3, I might not, quote unquote, start my second job, which is other artistic stuff. I might not start that until around 4 o'clock because I want to exercise and eat and spend time with my family. And then that in turn will give me the energy to do the second part of my day. And then that might only be 3-5 hours at the most. And then I'll go to bed. And that's 7 days a week. And it
Yeah,
also,
no, I love that.
it gives you the flexibility that if something does come up, like an event or a friend that you haven't seen in a long time comes into town, it's like, okay, I know this stuff can wait a couple of days, if not a week, to get done. Let me just put this stuff down because this is someone I haven't seen in 2 months, 4 months, a year. And for anybody who's wondering, that is a regular occurrence as an adult.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. Having the ability to prioritize too, like you said, because you can. I know it might be hard. And oh my gosh, I also so resonated with this, Cody, where you were like, I was at my friend's play, but I was like thinking about how I could be doing this other stuff. No, and I've fully been there. I've fully been there, Cody. Resonate with that so much where I'm out with friends, but literally thinking to myself, like, dang, I could be like working on this and this and this. But then how you realized you thought to yourself and you were like, no, like these relationships are so important and things like that. So it's like prioritizing the things that matter and reminding yourself that yes, we love what we do and our work is great and being a creative is great. But truly at the end of the day, it does come down to those like small things and those small moments and reminding yourself of that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and also, it's very hard for actors and people who sort of have big delusional sized goals to actively feel like they need to take a break. But the one thing that I love so much from super uber successful people, specifically actors, before Bryan Cranston became an actor, he toured the country with his brother on the back of a motorcycle. And Matthew McConaughey, throughout the entirety of his acting career, it's like his book Green Lights indicates the point that acting was like this much. But traveling and meeting people and having experiences made up the bulk of his life. Andrew Rannells, before he was Andrew Rannells with the Book of Mormon and he was in New York City. Yes, he did a lot of auditioning to make sure he got those opportunities. But also, he was living the culture in New York City and he was experiencing things and experiencing life. And that, for me, is sort of the most beautiful thing about pursuing this career. And it's the one thing that for me I'm going to be doing moving forward, because I've realized one of the bigger reasons why actors do not get where they want to is because this industry and everything becomes an all or nothing thing, and they don't give themselves permission to go on vacation or hang out with friends or do all the things they need to rejuvenate themselves to get excited for the next week.
Yeah, no, I love that, Cody. And I think it's a constant reminder too. Like, I think we constantly need to be reminding ourselves of the things that truly matter. And the beautiful thing, you kind of touched on this as well. The beautiful thing about being an actor is like, we're portraying life. So as weird as it sounds, it almost is productive to go and travel the world for a few months or to go hang out with your friends because you're filling your cup up and you're getting this life experience that you're then going to be able to pull from later on. That's always how I justify it in my head, which is might be effed up in a way that I have to like justify hanging out with my friends to like be productive somehow, but whatever it takes, you know what I'm saying? And it really is true because then you do fill yourself up and you are more energized to come back to your craft and things like that. You're not going to have anything to pull from if your whole life is acting. You're not going
Exactly.
to have anything to act out.
100%. And look, when it comes to this career and everything that we do, yes, it could be considered delusion. But my very same acting teacher, Kevin O'Leary, he said this quote that once again has stuck with me for the entirety of my life. And he said, "Delusion is what other people call the things that you want because they don't have the vision that you have for your life. And for me, it's like delusion or how big our dreams are or anything in that aspect. It's like, yes, absolutely. But you know what the worst part about life is? It's not the delusional dreams you might have. It's the regrets that you have when you turn 80 years old and you realize that when you were young, not only did you have the chance to have a wonderful acting career or a creative life, you also missed out on so many opportunities to be around cool people and experience really, really awesome things. And that's, if we're talking about fear, I'm going to shout out my writing partner, Angelina Buzelli, because she did something for me that I did not realize that I needed creatively. Is we were sort of breaking for Christmas break last year, and a feature script, the one that we're working on together right now, I had started writing that script 3 years ago, and it won an award at a festival down in Atlanta, and she saw it, and we've been friends for a little while, and she says, well, I guess you should send me that script to read. She took it home with her over Christmas break. We got back, and she says, I hope you know I read that script every single day that I was home. And there are a few things that we need to go over together. And shortly after that, she became my writing partner. And this is a script that, long story short, once it is completed, we are going to pitch to the industry in some capacity. And I can't say too much about it now, but Angelina has given me permission to give the log line of the script, since this is sort of the announcement of the script. And the script is called Whatever It Takes. It's about a young woman named Jessica who allows herself to voluntarily be kidnapped because she believes her captors are the same people who took her sister, and she believes they still have her. And that is the log line we're using to gather interest. But there's a lot of things inside of the script that are important to both of us that we want people to see it, and we want it to get made. And that, let's face it, that in and of itself is delusional. Like, in the modern sense, it's delusional inside of the industry that we're in. But the thing is, we both know it's going to happen. And why do we know? Because it's something that we've been working towards ever since we started writing together.
Yeah, no, I love that. I always remind myself too, I'm like, delusion's gotten me this far, so whatever. Like, truly, I think you have to be a little bit delusional in our business. What we're doing is a little bit delusional, and that's fine. I embrace it. Yeah. Also, number one, that is a really cool log line, and congrats to you guys.
One thing that I appreciate that you talk about so much, whether it's the podcast or whether it's your YouTube channel, is if you're getting into this industry, be prepared to get your finances in order. Because I've said it, you have said it, you walk into this industry in any capacity, you're an entrepreneur now. It's, especially if you want to do this as a hobby, that's great. Do it as a hobby. But if you're someone like us who wants to do it professionally and has a certain level that you want to reach, you become a business owner as soon as you walk into the door, essentially.
Yes, no, I love that, Cody, and I think that's really important. I always tell people, like, before you even, yeah, if you're planning on moving to a bigger market, save up a lot of money before you even come out here, and then also start working the minute you get out here, if you can. And when I say working, I mean maybe even like a day job, if you gotta have one, but save up a lot of money before you come. And if you have to take a step back, if you're already in a big city and you're really financially struggling, if you have to take a step back, I always tell people do it, because you cannot approach this craft if you can't live your life if your finances are not in order. I just think it's so important. If you quite literally don't know how you're going to make rent this month, I'm sorry, but acting goes out the window for that moment. Like, you need to get that shiz in order. Take a step back, save up some money. With the internet and things like that, there are a lot of, I don't want to say easy ways to make money, but we're blessed these days that there are more creative ways to make money than there used to be. Well, that's all we got. You have any last words for our Acting Like an Actor viewers?
First of all, I want to thank our wonderful host, Sophie Jordan Collins, for bringing me on, because this has been fun. This has been a really great show.
I just want to say, guys, if you are not familiar, Cody does have a podcast called the Artists and Emotions Podcast. And I just want to thank you, Cody, for everything that you're doing for our industry. I think it's so awesome giving artists a platform to talk about some really hard things. Especially recently, you guys got very vulnerable on a recent episode, and I just think that it's so beautiful that you guys are bringing that stuff in the light. I think when stuff is hidden, a lot of shame comes around that stuff when you don't talk about it, and as hard as it can be to talk about that stuff, bringing it to the light brings awareness, and therefore it ends up helping stop it in the long run. So I do want to thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I want to thank you for having this platform because I know I started my podcast for my own reasons, but the fact that this podcast is here and sort of helping spread the word about mental health, because once again, I have always been of the opinion that although hearing celebrities talk about mental health is nice, we don't hear it enough. We, not necessarily celebrities, but in terms of the common everyday artist, we do not hear discussions about mental health enough inside of this industry.
Hmm. And nobody talks about it from the perspective of like, just like being on the journey or being in it for a long haul. I feel like when the celebrities and the A-listers talk about it, it's always like, well, back when, but nobody kind of talks about mental health in the midst of this crazy journey that we're on, if that makes sense, before hitting the peak of your success, which that's all good and that's fine too, but it's also beautiful to talk about it while you're on the journey. So, yeah.
100%. We're in this together.
Yes, we are. And with that, we'll catch you guys next week.